Hi everyone and welcome to this December bullet journal plan with me video, which is the last plan with me video of this year. We have a very cozy wintry theme with some soft neutral tones, which are my personal favorite for this time of the year. And without further introductions, let's get started with the cover spread. We're gonna start with this winter village painting that's heavily inspired by a painting I did 2 years ago in December. I've wanted to make a one-page version of that painting with slightly different colors as well, and I also wanted to include this in my upcoming shop winter collection, so I think this was a perfect opportunity to just combine all of that. I'm gonna scan this painting later and use the printed out version, so I'm painting this in a slightly larger size. I always feel like any small details are a little bit easier to paint when you have more room, but you could always just paint directly into your notebook or just take a piece of watercolor paper that you can directly attach to it. But after taping this to my painting board with some washi tape, I started the whole painting with a pencil sketch. When working with watercolors, especially with light tones as we're gonna use in this one, I always try to keep the pencil sketch as light as possible. So because of that, you can barely see it in the video. So I'm kind of gonna speed through this part and just show you what I had in the end. Basically, I just sketched all the houses in this picture, so all the windows, doors, and so on, but left pretty much everything else out at this point. But when we have some guidelines on the paper, it's time to take out the watercolors and start the painting process. I feel like I haven't praised these Winsor&Newton professional watercolors as much as I should have. I got them earlier this year and they are just so good. They are very pigmented and vibrant type of watercolors, so the color you lay down doesn't get much lighter when it dries. I find that it makes painting with them very fast and easy because you don't need to constantly go back to deepen the colors you just applied. But anyway, we're starting here from the houses again, and first I just added the main color for all of them. I wanted everything in this picture to be very neutral, kind of like in my old painting, but I wanted this one to have a little bit less green and more of this grayish blue color. And I also wanted to add a small touch of dark navy or indigo shade in this version. So a slightly different color combination and overall vibe than in the previous painting, but I'd say that the style in general is very close. We're leaving all the roofs of the houses white, which is gonna add a very cute wintry look to this village. So after the main colors, it was time to start adding the windows and any other small details. I tried to keep the window colors very similar to kind of tie the colors together a little bit here. So I decided to use that dark blue color, and I think it just looks so pretty against the houses. I actually saw this picture online and was so inspired by this color combination. I think it's absolutely beautiful for winter, so I wanted this painting to have a similar color story, even though the style is still pretty different. We are gonna add white window frames to all the windows with a gouache paint later, so if the sides are not exactly smooth or if there are small differences in the sizes or angles of the windows, those are all things we can perfect later. But yeah, so after adding the dark blue color to the windows, I just kept adding small details to the houses to make them look a little bit more interesting. Before we go forward with the painting though, I thought this was a good moment to add the sky color, and I actually was very indecisive about this step. I eventually went with this brownish gray color, but I think this is something you could definitely change for your picture to get a little bit different look. For example, I think a light blue would create a more frosty appearance, and a warmer brown might also be a good idea. That's kind of more what I used in my old painting. I added a layer of clear water to the sky first, which will help the colors to blend very seamlessly, and it also encourages them to spread to any small areas you might forget to directly add the color. I also kept adding a little bit darker color closer to the houses until the white roof color stood out clearly enough from the sky. I felt like the tall house ended up being a little bit too close to the sky color to my liking, so I decided to darken it up a bit, and after that it's time to continue adding details to this painting. I also started to paint some evergreens that will help to cover any of the empty spaces, and I started with these lighter trees in the distance. So I mixed a lot of water with the color to get it to look more translucent, and then we'll paint some darker trees in between and also towards the front, and those will also get a little bit more details. I feel like I've painted evergreens so many times in my videos, but I think they are such an easy tree to start painting with. All you need to do is to paint this triangle shape by creating small strokes on both sides, and you really don't need to be super careful with it either. Any kinds of blobs in this shape will eventually look like evergreens, which is why they are so fun and easy to paint. But now that we have filled some space with the trees, I also added this small hill and a pathway towards the front of the painting. I felt like the bottom looked a little bit empty, and since we are creating a vertical painting, I think adding something to the top and bottom is kind of important. But after that, it's finally time to take out a white gouache paint, and we are gonna add pretty much all the rest of the details with this one. So I started with the window frames and also fixed any of the snowy parts if some other colors managed to get on the way. And then we're later also adding some snow to the darker evergreens to create an even more wintry appearance. I was using a very small brush here and just the necessary amount of water with this white paint to make it easier to work with, but I still wanted it to be as pigmented as possible to show up against the darker blue windows. I think adding all the white details really changes the look of this painting and makes it much more detailed and cozy. Then I also wanted to add these bigger snowflakes in the sky, which we are gonna intensify a little bit after I scan this image. So after I was happy with all these details and had added any small fixes like shadows here and there, I removed tapes and scanned this picture onto my computer. I'll link my scanner to the description with all the other products I'm using in this video in case you're interested. So this step is of course completely optional. I know it's probably not very helpful for most of you watching these videos, but since this painting is going on my shop, I want it to be the best version it can be. So I always start by fixing the colors and the sharpness of the painting, because those are some things that the scanning really destroys, and then I'll start to edit any small mistakes. I am using Adobe Photoshop for this, by the way, but there are many other photo editing softwares that you could use instead. So I always need to remove some dust particles or hair from the picture, and this time I also went over some of the white window frames to make them pop a little bit better. And then I actually also added a few of these leafless trees because I thought there were just a few areas that looked a little bit empty. And of course I forgot to screen capture this part, so I'm sorry for kind of skipping to the end here. You'll see that the picture definitely changed quite a bit with all these small polishing steps, which is why I always do this for my paintings. But anyway, that's all for the painting part, and you can see the final difference here between the printed out version and the original one. I use Canon's premium matte photo paper for all my prints, which I think is a good balance between being sturdy but also thin enough to easily attach to your journal. So the painting is going on the right side, and then we're gonna create a monthly calendar here on the left page. I had these two craft papers that I wanted to use this month. I absolutely love this navy blue color, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to add this behind the brown paper as kind of a shadow or just leave it out. So you'll see me kind of changing it up as we go. But anyway, first things first, we're gonna write a December title here. I haven't used a cursive title in a while, and I decided to make things extra hard for myself by writing this with a brush and watercolors. I just really wanted to use the same dark blue tone as we used in the painting, so I sketched out the whole title beforehand, and I even sketched the thicker lines just to make it as easy as possible to follow with the watercolor brush. And you could of course use a pen or a brush pen to do the same thing. But after the title was done, I lined the whole calendar with a white paint pen. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm using the back side of my brown craft paper, which has a slightly more gray tone. I thought it went well with the cooler tones in the painting. And yes, in the end, I decided to add this dark blue shadow to both of these boxes. And if you do this, you don't need to waste a big piece of paper. I usually just cut out a small sliver, which is just enough to show under the main box. But yeah, that's it for the cover page this time. I would say that this is probably the most time-consuming one out of this whole video. I think this theme ended up being more on the simple side, especially compared to the past few themes I've done on my channel, but I hope you'll get some ideas from it nevertheless. But now it's time to move on, and next we're gonna create a planning and reflection combination spread with a Dutch door in the middle. I wanted something very simple for this whole section because the painting took a little bit longer than I anticipated. So I decided to take out this grid pattern, which is one of the 4 patterns in my new upcoming winter collection. I honestly think any of the patterns would work for this purpose, but this was the only one I had ready at the time I was filming this, so that's why we are going with it. I leave the date of my shop launch on the screen, and there will also be a big Black Friday sale. I do have a newsletter in case you want to be the first one to know whenever something new is launching. I also often give some extra discounts for the people in the newsletter, and all the information and links you need are in the description. But yeah, so we're just gonna use a pattern to line the tops and bottoms of these pages. But if you don't have this, any grid washi tape or even plain colored paper would work perfectly and do the same job. Whenever I want some super simple decorations, I try to combine colors and these colorful papers as much as possible. So I wanted to use the same dark blue and brown craft papers to create backgrounds for the titles and for a few boxes on both of these pages. I also made sure to place everything just inside of the Dutch door area so that when we flip the page over, it still covers everything except the grid paper on the sides. But then when it comes to the actual journaling content of my December planning spread, I actually started with a gift list. So here I list any Christmas presents I'll need to get. I don't think I'll need to get this many, but at least there's enough space for it. But other than that, I would say that this is a pretty standard monthly planning spread for me. So I like to use these spreads at the very beginning of the month to kind of make an overall plan and really set my focus for the month ahead. I like these open focus sections that let me just write some free flow of thoughts and choose a few things I think are the most important to focus on in the upcoming month. Before we move on to the next page, I first wanted to paint just a few very quick dangling Christmas elements here. To be honest, this was just something I added in the end. It's one of those decorations I probably have left out if I wasn't filming a video, but I just felt a little bit bad about the lack of decorations this month, so I just wanted to add something quick here. However, I don't know if I liked how this turned out that much. I guess as an idea, this is definitely something you could incorporate in your winter or holiday layouts. And since I felt like the ornaments themselves looked a little bit empty here, I decided to add a few very quick leaves and branches to the top part. But yeah, overall, I could have probably done a better job with these, not gonna lie. But anyway, let's jump to the second page, and here I first added these 4 sections for different weeks in December, and I'll use these to write a very brief plan or focus for each week. I think this will be especially helpful because I have a few extra videos I need to film at the beginning of December, but towards the end of the month I'll again travel to Finland during the holidays to visit my family. If you're new around here, I'm from Finland but I live in Japan, and the Christmas time is usually the time of the year I visit my friends and family there, so because of that there are some videos I'll need to pre-record before I leave. Then the last thing here is this very simple what's next question, which kind of ties nicely to the second spread, which is all about reflecting. So in December, we are not only reflecting on the previous month, but I like to include a few sections to reflect on the whole past year. So I used the same brown craft paper and made these 2 boxes. The first one will just be an overall what's on my mind question that is just a great feeling dump at the end of the month. But the other box will be my thoughts about 2023 as a whole. So whatever looking back at this year makes you feel, or what are the first things that comes to mind, I thought having a section to record those thoughts and feelings might be very helpful. Then the second page here will first get the biggest achievements of 2023 section, which is something I always like to include at the end of the year. I think it's so important to look back and celebrate your wins, no matter how big or small they were. And then lastly, I included the standard monthly review graph that I've been including in many of my past themes. So I'll just review the whole past month on these few different areas from 1 to 10. But that's all for the simple plan and reflect pages of this month. I somehow really like the idea of having these together. But now let's flip to the final spread of this December layout, which is gonna be for the weekly pages as always. So yeah, I felt a little bit bad about not making any exciting decorations on the previous spread and also keeping this layout kind of short. I personally know I'm not gonna use my bullet journal much in December because I will be traveling, so having lots of spreads and stuff to track is just not necessary for me. But I still thought we could do something a little bit more interesting here and create this layered winter pattern to the sides of the pages. So we are again using the dark blue and brown craft papers. But I'd say that this would definitely be easier to draw directly onto the journal because that way you can use the dot grid as your guide. I actually sketched these main diamond star shapes using the dot grid to figure out the size and spacing. And basically one of the diamonds requires 6 times 6 dots. And if you use the very edges of the page, you can fit exactly 7 of these in a row. So I had to transfer this sketch onto the blue paper, and then we're gonna cut this zigzag edge to the middle page here that I also used to draw the same shape on the brown craft paper. I will fit 2 weeks on one spread here because I think that's all the space I need. But if you like more room for your weeklies, you could easily just double the amount of pages here in the middle to have one full spread for each week. But yeah, I cut out 4 of these brown zigzag pieces, and then we can start to draw the pattern with the same white pen we used earlier. I actually got the idea for this pattern by going through some knitting craft patterns. There are so many on the internet for knitting Christmas sweaters and stuff, so you might notice that the shapes I use for the pattern are also very simple and easy to copy. The star shapes were the only ones I kind of planned beforehand, but then I was kind of just winging the rest of it, which is why this is probably not the prettiest pattern out there. But I feel like the thing with this is that the more you add, the more impressive it starts to look, especially when you look at the pattern from a small distance. If you have less time, you could easily leave out any parts here that you don't like, or just make the pattern smaller from the beginning. After filming this left side, I copied the exact same thing to the right page out of camera, and then I filmed setting this middle part again with the same pattern. If you're feeling more creative than I was while filming this, you could easily switch out the pattern slightly for this middle section, or even change the background paper color for a more interesting look. But I do think that it looks very pretty when these patterns line up when you flip the page around. But that's all for the decorations here, and otherwise I set up a very basic weekly spread, which is some room for daily to-do lists and then a small space for any random notes I might have throughout the month. Also, I realized a little bit too late that I started to set up the second weekly page instead of the first one, but I'll probably use the same layout there, so I'll just do that one out of camera. But yeah, there we have it, a very short and sweet December layout, which is also the first video I filmed in our new apartment. I bet you couldn't notice that because I'm using the same table as the background. But honestly guys, I've had so much going on in my life for the past few months that I haven't had much time to spend on the channel, but I hope things settle a bit with the new year and I can spend more time with you in the upcoming videos. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. It truly means a lot to still have people watching after yet another year of bullet journaling, and I hope I'll still see you next year as well. But I guess that's it for this time. There are many more videos coming in December, but in the meanwhile, I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!